Sometimes we sit in our offices and then we're thinking about how do we change the globe? Like, whoa, how about your home? How about your neighborhood? We have to actually start locally, work there, and then from there build it out.
We spend our time in lots of different areas, pulled in lots of different directions, building, creating. But one of the things I think we skip over is what happens when the person that's doing all of that building hasn't done the internal work themselves, hasn't set into their emotions, the things that are kind of swirling around. When you can design a strategy, but you can't sit with disagreement. When you can lead a room, but you can't regulate under pressure. Today's guest spent years surrounded by some of the most brilliant change makers in the world. And he'll share today some of what he discovered is some of the things that they were wrestling with and struggling with. It wasn't because they were missing a better strategy, but something internal. And so today I'm so excited. In the Building Thinkers podcast, we're going to be talking about the inner work that makes everything else you build hold together and some of the journey to that. So I'm so excited to be joined today by
Mentor Dida.
Mentor. Thank you for joining.
Hey, and that's actually my name. It's funny because mentor is like, wait, is that your title or your name? My actual name is Mentor. So it's
Beautiful. It's
yeah.
appropriately your name and your role.
Thank you. I'm trying.
Yeah, that's nice when that works out. Can you tell us a bit of your story and how you got to the work that you're doing now? Whatever way you want to get there, share that with us, and then we'll continue to dig in from there.
Long story short, I come from Kosovo. Most of the people that know Kosovo know because of the war in Kosovo. And to me, that meant that when my mom was pregnant with me, she went to the hospital to give birth to me, and then they denied her because she was Albanian. So she had to travel like 60 miles in another hospital where she knew somebody, and they snuck her in to actually give birth to me. So I was literally born into injustice, and that type of oppression actually triggered into a whole ethnic cleansing and genocide process. And how that looked like for me as a 9-year-old afterwards, it was these soldiers with masks just came to our home and kicked us out. And they violently took us into the trains. From the trains, we went somewhere. We did not know where we're going. And then they decided that they want to take us to Macedonia. But at the border, they said, we don't accept refugees. And then all of a sudden, outside of the border, there was like 70,000 people just being pushed with trains. And we started like a refugee camp there. And why I'm sharing is this because during that moment, my parents were very scared because there's so many people, so much panic and no infrastructure for nothing. But all of a sudden, these volunteers from all over the world, Tracy, started coming to help us. Like UNHCR, Red Cross, Oxfam, like all of these organizations just started setting up, giving us food, shelter, all these things. And as a kid, I was like, whoa, there's people that care like this. And then there's people who are doing this harm. Like my job in life is going to be to actually make sure that more people are caring, more people are like the volunteer. So as a kid, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I knew that the world needs more of that. And that has been my driver for wanting to come to United States. I came here as an exchange student in high school, and then I went to community college, and then I transferred to Arizona State University. When I transferred there, I realized that I don't want to be an engineer. I want to do what I always wanted to do as a kid. I want to help people educate also the heart, not just the mind, like build more change makers in this world. And then since then, I was like, started a club. I did an NGO. I did a movement, couple of things as a student. I was unstoppable, really going at it. And then I ended up joining Ashoka after graduation. And Ashoka is the organization that pioneered the field of social entrepreneurship. So they coined the term. They're also, all about system changing social entrepreneurship, not just doing this. And then I got to work with these network of Ashoka fellow social entrepreneurs And then after Ashoka, I decided to, some of the lessons and things that I've learned there, to actually start my own thing and be more focused on the higher ed focus, and also helping organizations. So that's been a little bit of my journey.
Thank you for sharing. It's such an incredible journey and story. And thank you for the way you brought us into your story. And it makes so much sense, how you ended up where you are now with this desire to build more. And I'm just struck by that comparison of there were people that were doing the worst kind of harm, and there were people that were doing the best kind of care, coming in and meeting you in that moment. And maybe a place we could start is, I know the world is always going to be a place that is a wild moment. So I can't even say it's a dynamically challenging time, because that will always be true. I can say it will always be true. And so maybe for some of our listeners that are wrestling with the desire that they have to be a change maker, can we start with, where should somebody begin? Is it internal work that you do first? Is it community work that you look to do? How can people that have this maybe even big desire to do something, but they stop themselves and say, well, I can never, do that. Can we dig into some of that, wherever you want to go?
Oh gosh, I love that, because sometimes you also want to ask this question of like, so what makes the difference between the soldier and the volunteer?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
how can we actually make sure we're like the volunteers? Because you see, the soldier is also thinking what he's doing is right.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about if they're doing it for good or bad. To him, that is good. you know
Yeah.
so this idea of good and bad is actually something that we have to be careful for, especially if we are change makers, because your good might be somebody's bad. And sometimes we ask, like, so how do we show up then so that whatever we're doing contributes? And to me, the answer lies into identity, who
Mm.
we choose to be. Because if we choose to be, I'm an American, I'm an Albanian, I'm a teacher, I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, I'm Republican, I'm Democrat, I'm this, if that is your primary identity, then your intelligence is going to serve that identity. So my call is for us to expand identity and actually start to see as human beings. Others are part of the human family, and include them as part of humanity. And if we identify as humans first, then our intelligence serves humanity. So I think that is a step sometimes we forget. We go directly to youth empowerment, but if there's no expansion of identity, then what happens is that empowerment turns into a force to dominate, a force to divide rather than include. So I feel like all of us have to do this work to actually expand our shared humanity and tap also into these more existential realities of who we are, which is, you can say, I'm a piece of life. I am the creation of universe, child of God, whatever you want to call yourself. Like, just know that there's this big umbrella that is actually bringing us together.
That's beautiful. So when people are starting to think about this expansion of identity, like maybe they've never, I would imagine that many maybe haven't sat with that, because we're so busy. We're going so many directions that, like, the slowing down and kind of, we said a lot of times with our university students, like holding beliefs at arm length just for a moment. We're not saying you're going to mess with them or change them or anyone's going to tell you to think in a different way, but can you just hold it at arm's length for a minute to investigate and pause? Is that what, maybe even practically some of the identity work looks like, to do that pause? Does it start with pausing? Does it start with reflecting? Does it start with meditation, mentor? Like, what do you think about that?
Beautiful. I like the arm's length one. I think that's actually, we have to actually ask this question, because, Simon Sinek talks about starting with why. And I feel like it's actually wrong. Here's my take. I think we need to start with who. Who are you? Like, who are you? It's the most profound question that has been asked from millennia, right? Who are you? Because if you really look at it, you come to, okay, am I my name? Am I mentor? Or is that just my name? And it's like, oh yeah, that's my name. That's what people call me. And then you can get very philosophical here, and maybe even spiritual to a degree. But you get to see that actually your sense of identity is a result of all the information that you have consumed. And sometimes that is formed to us when we're children, and sometimes as we grow up, but it is something that we all have. All of us have this identity. So when the identity gets threatened, that's where the problem becomes, because it feels like you are being threatened. And there needs to be a distance a little bit. Here's an example. Let's say you are in Europe, soccer, football, it's like the craziest thing. If somebody's for Barcelona and you say, like, Barcelona sucks, Real Madrid is better, it's like cussing at them, and like their identity gets hurt, and then it's like, oh my God, like, no, why? Harry Potter sucks. What? Harry Potter is great, because a part of you feels threatened, right? So if we keep it in arm's length to actually see that, hey, there's a distance between the stories of who I am and the witness. If we're conscious of this process of the who, then we get to see that actually sometimes things get triggered and hurt, and we make so many decisions based on an identity. Like, I'm left, that's who I am. I was raised to be a Republican. Like, that's the worst thing to hear. Like, you don't want to raise a certain way. You want to make decisions based on what the situation demands, So I think holding identities loosely is the key here, and actually exploring and shaping them consciously on how do you want to show up? What does this world demands us to show up? That is easier said than done, but it is actually a lifelong practice. It's a commitment, it's a practice. And to me, that's what being the change is all about. Gandhi didn't say just do the change, like be the change. That's what it means, is you don't live by slogans, you respond to the situation as it demands.
I'm struck by that differentiation that you just made between doing the change and being the change. I think we get very caught up in the do, and even, maybe for our short attention spans, we're like, we have to be practical, we have to put it into action, we have to go do it. And we much lessen the time of the sitting in it, the hardness of holding something at arm's length and considering, because I think as you do that, you can also pause and say, ooh, some of the actions, some of the choices that I've made maybe were unfounded, or were founded in a misaligned identity to what I now believe and see is needed in the world. And so I'm thinking about some of what you wrote about in our podcast worksheet about what you saw in, you kind of skimmed over it, but these amazing things that you got to be a part of doing. It was like, oh, I started an NGO, no big deal. And then I did this. But I want to go back to some of that, because you saw really powerful other change makers, up close, were a part of that, and the system changing work. And I want to go into, what really worked about that? What did you learn? Maybe some of that. And what was missing that you recognized you wanted to explore further, whichever place you want to start there.
Oh gosh, thank you. It feels like therapy talking to you.
I have gotten that before. It's kind of funny.
Let's go. At Ashoka, I got to meet really incredible people, and Bill Drayton, the founder himself, like, just brilliant, like operating in a whole nother level of strategy, of thinking, which I really appreciate. And we do need to think about system change. We do need to think about that. But when I was, there's this obsession that entrepreneurs have, and that obsession is sometimes how they get things done, how they get things done. They go, persist. It's so hard. They get into it. They do it. And kudos to them. Honestly, kudos to them for sacrificing their energy, their time, their relationships, all these things. They're sacrificing to do that. And I respect it, I respect it. But is that what is needed for all of us? Is that actually the right way to look at it? Because it looks so intimidating for you to actually go and say, like, you know what, I'm going to put my house on this NGO and I'm going to go all in because this is what I do. And sometimes risk is like that. I understand. I bow down to them. And I also ask the question then, how about us? Like, is everybody, all of us required to do that thing? And to me, this is the difference between a social entrepreneur and a change maker, right? Social entrepreneur is an entrepreneur who's actually using this entrepreneurial drive to create solutions in society. I love that. Great. A change maker is someone who actually sees how to change themselves so that in whatever they are, wherever they are, they can contribute and show up fully. So it's not necessarily to just launch ventures. Maybe it's a venture, great. Maybe it's a volunteering thing. Maybe you're just a teacher, or maybe you're a dentist and you're just trying to maybe have some conversations to see the potential in your patients. You know, whatever that is, in every situation, that calling for being the change in all of these situations. Because even the social entrepreneurs will tell you that sometimes all of the changes are a result of this inner shift that they've had. You know, everything started there, you know, and then sometimes the fire is so much that you just feel like, you know what, I'm gonna go all in here. So that is the difference. It doesn't mean we all become social entrepreneurs, but we can all be change makers.
Mm. Mentor, there's something in that I want to process out loud for a minute, because I think about the exponential power that is in individual people. And then I'm like, I have a visual in my mind of, if Mentor is changed internally, then when you go to the grocery store, when you go, every interaction that you have, in your family, in your friend group, in people that disagree with you, in people that might listen to this, you have all this like ripple change of that is being the change, that it's not isolated to one, to your point, like one venture, which the venture can be incredible. But what if we shifted as individuals, as humans, collectively, and then you can almost imagine like that ripple to the people around you? Is that a little bit of how you see it, that there's this exponential power if we start with the individual?
Yes, Tracy, because I think ultimately we are connected.
Mhm.
Like, it's we're not operating as like soul, separate beings. There is this interconnection between all of us and life. And sometimes just a small random act of kindness somewhere can really have a ripple impact everywhere. Like, it is these small things that to me define the leader. A leader is not someone who does things once in a while, big things. It is that person who consistently shows up towards, in Charles Einstein's words, like, a more beautiful world, or no hearts know it's possible. Like, if we wake up and show up to that, I think that is such a incredible way to do it and to live. And there's meaning, and there's meaning, there's connections, there's community. Sometimes we sit in our offices and then we're thinking about how do we change the globe. Like, whoa, how about your home? How about your neighborhood? Like, it feels so basic, but we've kind of made industrialized this, like, oh, let's package it and scale it, the scale solutions. And I'm like, wait, what? Scaling? Like, this is also geo-sourced sometimes, like the food that we eat in the planet. They inform us a little bit. There's life, there's community, culture, all these things that inform something to be born that is meaningful. It's very difficult to sit here and try to plan one thing that works somewhere to scale the same thing. Like, that's a capitalistic thinking that we have to actually start locally, work there, and then from there build it out. I feel like that is the opportunity that we have, and then shifts inspire other shifts. It kind of goes indirectly, then a lot of things start to getting into the place.
Yes. Okay. I have an example of this from this week, a local conversation here, where we were talking about how it used to be in America that everybody was hanging out on the front porch. Homes were designed with front porches and kids all played in the street together. And so therefore you knew your neighbors. And I think it was, I can't remember the exact time period. It was definitely after the Industrial Revolution. We started to shift front porches to back porches and build fences, and then suddenly you don't know your neighbors as well because there's this also American like desire for independence and privacy and individualism. We left many, although we're a different example of this because we have multi-generational living in our home, but many people left, family intentionally to like go out on their own. So we were talking with this friend group about, getting back to the front porch. And in our neighborhood, we decided to put this big turquoise picnic table in our cul-de-sac, like at the edge. So we would go out there and have lemonade in the afternoon and just be out physically where our neighbors are. And you start to see other people come sit at the table. There are some folks that drive by and they know that like our cul-de-sac is a place that they can stop. Like some workers nearby will stop and I'll see them come sit at the table. And it's like a small shift. It's like a $45 picnic table that we painted blue, but it was an intention to go from back porch to front porch. Like, are these the kind of shifts that we can make? That like, does that matter, mentor? Because we could also I could hear the cynic being like, what difference does that make?
You see, like, I think that's the best example and super inspiring. I also feel like how this shows up in times of crisis, just to show you. During the war or even during pandemic, people there, if there's no news, no nothing, like what happens? People go to the neighbors and say, hey, what's going on? It's like, oh yeah, well, we heard this news that there's water there and there's food here, like, oh yeah. And then you realize that actually you depend on each other. Like there's some sort of community feel that forms immediately, and it's the bedrock of a functioning society. Because those connections, now we have a loneliness epidemic, which is a whole nother thing, but we have stopped even getting to know our neighbors. And I feel like even if your neighbors are whatever they are, I think they deserve to be treated with cookies once in a while. Regular thing, I bake some cookies and let's go every different thing. That thing is such a small. I here where I am, I with my wife, we paid for 100 coffees in a cafe opened, and we said, hey, this month there's 100 coupons. Please use them. This is our treat to you because we cannot meet all of you. It's a huge apartment building, but we would like to introduce ourselves. We have a WhatsApp group where everybody's at, and I posted there. And after that, they're like, hey, I'd like to go on a walk with you. And now we're planning our community cleanup. And then there's like, hey, can we invite the mayor to talk to us about these challenges? Like everything starts to shift once this relational field between people is activated, because we have the individual. We can meditate in our home and rooms. And I love that. I do that myself. But where do we practice it? We practice it in between each other. And that is the opportunity to growth. When we meet the neighbor and there's some feeling in our stomach that we don't feel right, like if we explore that feeling with curiosity, that's a huge area of growth for us. If we explore these feelings and things that trigger from the relational field from other people, curiosity in those, I think it's an amazing thing. And then you get to have lemonade and all these things, but also when times demand, you have a group to come to, like you have something where you belong and you can have fun and all of that can happen. So I think what you did is incredible, and what a great example. What a great example. So for the listeners, what can you do to actually get to know your neighbors?
It's like, where is your front porch? You may not have a front porch. It may be a front stoop, or it may be coffees, or it may be paying for the person behind you in the drive-through line. And one of the things there, I want to go into two parts of that. One, you talked about this dependence. We're actually interdependent on each other. And one of the things that has been actually a joy, in my opinion, and a need that we have that's been taken away by our independence is because when we have kind of this comfort and safety, it's a facade that we don't need each other, that, oh, I'm going to do it myself, right? And to your point, when does that kind of break down that facade? When during, war and times of crisis, during COVID, so we're in Texas, and when there is a significant ice storm, nobody knows what to do. Even though it's happened multiple times at this point, we still don't seem to know what to do because we don't know how to drive on it. Our electrical grid is a mess. And so suddenly everybody comes out because who has a generator? Who has water? Because all of the pipes in Austin froze during that. And so we have a well here. So people started coming here, literally coming to our well. It does strike me again as that's when people come out of their homes and into the cul-de-sac or the street to connect together. And so what if we realized before the crisis that the dependence on each other is not a negative, is not make us weaker, but it's so cliche, but that is the strength. But this intentionality to pause and think about, I want to go back to your who question, like, who am I apart from all that scurrying and striving and whatever's put out on social media? And even in my work world, which this one's tricky for me, if I'm honest, because my work is a part of my impact. And so separating that identity from like work, Tracy, now we're really therapizing, like from who I am apart from the work identity allows me to come back into front porch Tracy and into that other shift and maybe integrate them better so that they show up throughout.
We're 100% interconnected and dependent. This conversation is because someone is doing the electricity, somebody built this screen, this thing, the internet, like humanity, it's incredible. And I don't think we recognize that until we lose it.
Yeah.
Because when you lose it, then it's like, oh gosh, like this is, it has you rethink and not take things for granted. So I think there's a part of that there. And I think where that leads you to realize is this, this word has been abused, but the Ubuntu, I am because we are. You cannot do it this alone. Like we're here together in this journey. And sometimes there's competition, there's these things. All right, I understand. But when it comes to actually making the world a better place, we need collaboration. Our funders need to figure out that they should not have us fight for like funding and all these things. We should come together to actually figure out how to solve this properly and not like so scattered in all these different things. Like it does feel like, there is this call for people to unite and be effective into driving these things there. And that starts from an inner experience. Yeah, Mentor is saying we're interconnected. Great. But have you experienced that? Like, where can you taste the unity, where you can taste this interconnectedness? In my class, I have this class called Being the Change at ASU, and their homework is for students to go watch the sunset. And as they watch the sunset, to realize that all the energy on this planet comes from the sun rays. And that thing every day gives us energy, light, feeds us, and we're dependent. But also that thing spins around the galaxy, and the galaxy spins around other things, like just to remind ourselves of this interconnectedness. I feel like it is a practice that we need to bring into our day-to-day, and we need reminders in our lives, in our schools, at work, wherever we are, is that we're in this together. And I think it just gives more flavor to life in so many ways.
I hear in that the embodiment then that
Mm.
students experience. I was like in my mind imagining like student reading in textbook, oh, the world is interconnected, and then student experiencing the power and all of the ahas that might connect to that for sustainability, for, even just recognizing the beauty in our smallness, like that we are somehow this one little piece, maybe put some of our ego in check. There's an amazing researcher, Julia Freeland Fisher, who is researching around pro social skills. She talks about how opportunity, like for students, is not just about skill development. Yes, that's part of the equation. But another part that we don't often talk about is the network and the people and the relationships. And so, how do we develop these pro social skills? Well, it's certainly not by sitting independently, scrolling our phones and asking AI all of our questions. There's wonderful things that can happen with AI. And I'm definitely not a Luddite on that front at all. I just made some really cool stuff with Claude that I'm excited about. But if we only do that and we don't have these conversations, or we don't pause and watch the sunset, it's to what end are we doing it?
I feel like this is where, and you said it, we're moving into an experience economy. We're getting to a place that young people today are hating their social media. They're using it because they're addicted, but they don't like it.
Yeah.
And they're looking for experiences. They're looking for connections. Like they need to be intentional now. Back then, maybe the design of the community was smaller, was slower, and people had time to hang out. Today, if you don't plan it, and if there's not like a space, like it's just the way we've built our cities and our culture and our systems is actually very much about cars, business, flow of traffic, flow of goods, which I respect. I honor that. But how about experiences where we can be together? How about experiences where we can ask these questions? How about us actually, learning from one another? Now, where are the spaces? This historically has been the role of religion, but religion is struggling to balance the old and embracing the new, because the new is moving so quick, and this balance is difficult. Young people today are either struggling to find meaning there, so then they say like, oh, I'm spiritual, not religious, like you get all these movements happening. Universities in the other side, their influence has gone up, religions have gone down, but now universities are not being places in general where you go to make friends. Like they don't measure a classroom on how many friends did you make today. How was your experience? Here's a tip. When you go to bathrooms in airport, they have like, how was your experience today? Those smiley faces.
Yeah.
I would put those in classrooms. When students leave, they need to have a green smiley, because the experience needs to be meaningful to them, not just information, not just the bombarding with content. It is about like creating those spaces. And Tracy, I feel like we're starving for meaningful spaces. This is the big lack in our system right now. We cannot meet the neighbors because there's no community space. Even if there's like somebody is too busy, like we need to create intentional spaces that we can come together as human beings. We don't need to launch ventures. We can come dance together. Hey, celebrate life, sing something, watch something, whatever. But to come together, that is, we're spending time in our phones. That's where we're coming together. So that's not working.
Yeah, I hear so much of the need for experience over, this desire for efficiency. And when I think about the education system, which I know we're both deeply involved with, I think that you're absolutely right. We're moving towards coming back to the value of experience and understanding that while many things can be more accessible for students online at certain times to provide education, all that is great. And where are the places where we can develop these meaningful, in-person relational experiences, and they don't have to be overthought. One of the things that came to me when you were talking about dancing, together, is we have over formalized even like eating, at least here. And like we have to, go to a restaurant and plan all of this, or if you're doing it at your house, it's like catered or something. Anyway, and so one of the things that's literally on my vision board for this year, Mentor, is having friends come to our house for simple meals around our table, and just being there and being present, doing that, at least once a month or something, and just inviting people in. We sat around the fire afterwards and got to much deeper places just with friends from being there in the space. Then we're in the youth sports era right now, also, Mentor, with my two boys. And so a lot of times at the fields and stuff, it's quick conversations in passing because we're taking a kid from one place to the other place, but pausing like Friday evening around the fire with just not crazy food that took hours to prepare, but simple things. I want more of that, right?
Everybody wants more. Everybody. Honestly, it feels like the next maybe priests, imams, swamis, like people that brought these spaces. I feel like facilitators are those people. Like the facilitation as a skill is actually, I think, is very undervalued because they see it as a role, facilitator. And no, we all need to actually learn how to create meaningful spaces, whether it is at home, just relaxing and having simple meals, or, together. Sometimes I went to a friend's house and he invited all of us. And then he's like, all right, let's get cooking. And all of us decided to cook together. And it was, oh my God, so amazing that we connected. We're like cooking, we're all cleaning together. It doesn't have to be everything in place. Like, so sometimes it does need, people are starving for spaces to be human. I think that this is not only nice to have and kumbaya. I think this is where the human edge comes, because AI is there, but it is the human who's using the AI. And if the human is functioning at his best, then you can use AI better, so it is intentional spaces for us to be human. I feel like this is what the future of education is going to be. I think in our classrooms, it's going to be all about well-being, relationships, purpose, connection, designing, understanding solutions, getting out there, exposing yourselves to different things, designing solutions to come up with different things. I feel like that's where we're going to go. It's not going to be in a place that I come to a classroom to listen to my professor where he or she can talk to me for an hour, because I can ask ChatGPT and will know better than the professor. And then like, oh gosh, what do you do? So spaces is where the education is I think lacking behind, is these meaningful spaces, and to transform classrooms into those. They're scared that, oh, it's not going to do good for business. What jobs are they going to get? I promise you, you can look at all the data, all the things. When the human being functions better, is joyful, their mind is going to work better, their heart is going to work better, and they're going to perform better.
One of the guests that I had on recently talked about this idea of being like a tree that is providing shade for others. And I thought that was so beautiful. She was talking about at this point in her career and how she thinks about mentorship and how she thinks about ambition. And she wants to kind of rethink the way we consider ambition to how can I be shade for others? And that struck me as connected to what we've been talking about, and maybe gets us off of this like conveyor belt or hamster wheel of go, do to like the pause of zooming out and where am I in the bigger connection of the we?
Yes. Where am I in the biggest connection of the we? You should cut that. I think that's perfect. That's perfect, because students go to university but don't feel belonging. Like they're in their phones comparing, and it's a different world, and our system is not keeping up with it. So I love that, and yes, to getting together. Honestly, I started this organization, Changemaker Allies, because I want people to know people like you, Tracy, because I think the work that you're doing and others are doing, I think it's so important and so critical. But how do you make that leap? Yeah, how do we actually make that leap? And we just have to, keep coming together, talking, bringing, more of these conversations, and hopefully, people will come to senses, and I think those that do are going to have more success in this age, and their universities and spaces are going to do much better. So hopefully they get it. I think that's a huge opportunity there.
So when it comes to what we've been talking about, when it comes to being a change maker, what would you say if only people knew?
If only people know who they are not. I think if they know who are they not, they would be open to being who they are. There is a deeper intelligence at the core of who we are that, when we align our minds and hearts to it, then the right actions will flower from that. And sometimes we have all these small limited identities that don't allow us to tap into that because we make ourselves small. But actually the core of who we are, it's something really big. It's something that connects all of us, not just as humans, with all life, with the planet. Big bang, you can go as much as you want, because ultimately your stars, your atoms came from the stars, like that's how cool you are. So please, like, don't forget that. I think that is such a big thing, and we need this type of thing before we empower young people or anybody. The intelligence is intellect is like a knife. Okay, our minds, the intellect is like a knife, and deducts, synthesis, analyzes. It does all these things, but the hand that holds the knife is our identity, is our sense of who we are. And when we expand that identity, our intelligence serves the bigger whole. So that's a long answer, but it's from my heart, and I hope it resonates.
Well, first of all, I'm struck by how lucky your students are to have you teaching them. Um, it's so powerful and clear that, of course, you are an excellent change maker. And I'm thinking about all of the students and the other collaborators. And now our listeners get to be a part of your impact. And just thinking about how, for our listeners, there's nothing that's really too small. Maybe if there's just one thing you can pause and think about and hold at arm's length for a moment and think about where you can pause and show up and be a part of this connection. Or maybe it's, sitting and watching the sunrise, like Mentor shared, and realizing our smallness and yet our expansiveness and the impact of that. And thank you too for, this permission, I think, to pause. I think we can get so overwhelmed by all of the challenge that is happening in the world right now that we don't know where to start. And I hope that our listeners, after where you took us, have a sense of where to start and can pick up from there. And one of the things that we do with these episodes, I build a blueprint for thought, which is basically just a thinking exercise. And so I'm excited to dig back into this episode. I like reread the transcript and I think about what would make this actionable for folks. And I mean, there's 10 million things. So we'll see what happens with that. But for our listeners, we'll put the link in the episode description where you can get those blueprints for thought. But Mentor, thank you so much for your time. We'll put the links to your work. And if folks want to reach out to you in the episode description as well, is there anything else that we didn't hit that you want to share with folks?
Oh my God, Tracy, just to celebrate you, honestly. Thank you for being you. Thank you for doing this type of work. And I know it's hard. I know it's, but you're not alone. And we got this, it's not you got this, but we got this, because it is our time, especially in times of polarity, in times of, like people left and right. I think for us to create spaces where people can go a little bit above the left and right, and kind of just see the whoa, like hold this complexity. I feel like that's so important, and your work does that so well. And I'm honored to be here. And if anybody wants to reach out, if you're an ally, both of us are ready. LinkedIn works,
Yeah.
or anywhere else. So thank you for having me, and best of luck to everything, and see you soon, and let's make something happen.